goes to Mayor.
Good evening and welcome to the February 3rd, 2025 Pros Commission meeting. Could we get a roll call? Secretary Vickers.
Yes, good evening. Commissioner Pinkstaff,
Here.
Commissioner Oler,
Here.
Commissioner Conson,
Here.
Commissioner Garland,
Here.
Vice Chair Cook,
Here.
and Chair Moran.
Here. We're going to move to public communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Does any member of the public wish to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll move on. The consent calendar. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does any commissioner have questions on the consent calendar item? Seeing none. Public comment for the consent calendar? No? Okay, then we're going to move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 2nd, 2024. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes for December 2nd, 2024.
Second?
A second.
I'll call the roll. Commissioner Pinkstaff,
Yes.
Commissioner Oler,
Yes.
Commissioner Conson,
Yes.
Commissioner Garland,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cook,
Yes.
and Chair Moran.
Yes.
Item passes unanimously.
All right. Next on our agenda is an item for commission consideration in the staff report on the CIP and the 10-year capital investment program.
The latest one, it should be the power. Probably with the power. Yeah. All right, great. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Alex Huang. I'm the senior civil engineer with the capital improvement program. And tonight I'm going to present to you the parks, recreation, and open space projects in the proposed 26 and 27 capital budget, and also the proposed 26 to 35 capital investment program. So this is a study session, so we can spend a little more time to answer questions and receive feedback. So just to give a quick outline of tonight's presentation. So I'm first going to review the Parks, Recreation, Open Space projects in the 26 and 27 capital budget. And then I'm going to take the commissioners' comments and the questions and comments. And then I'm going to go into the 26 and 35 capital investment program. And then I'll take the questions and comments for that afterwards. So next step is that I'm going to incorporate both the comments for the capital budget and the CIP and update the material. So what's the difference between the capital budget and the capital investment program? So the capital budget is the 2-year cycle that is approved every other year. It actually allocates the funding for each of the projects, and it's informed by the first 2-year cycle of the CIP. And it responds or incorporates what grants that we received. Opposed to the capital investment program. So this is more of a long-term planning tool. It's divided into 5 2-year cycles. It does not actually allocate any of the funds, but it provides a vision and defines priorities for the projects. And it optimizes each of the projects for grants and donation opportunities. All right, moving into the capital budget. So there's 2 main categories in the capital budget. There's the asset management category, and there's the discretionary project category. So the asset management projects maintains the existing facilities and assets. So city has a municipal maintenance plan, also called an MMP, that tracks the city assets and their service life, or when they will require substantial maintenance. These asset management projects are data-driven by asset management plans and user input. So as opposed to the discretionary projects, these projects are new improvements or substantial improvements to the existing facilities or assets. So tonight I'll be going over the asset management and the discretionary parks and open space projects. So where do we get the money to pay for these capital budget projects? So we have general fund, which is a percentage of the city's operating budget. In lieu parkland dedication, this is a developer fee on residential development. It's calculated as a product of the established rate of parkland required for each new resident from a development. So over the last budget cycle, there's been a reduction on new development, resulting in a reduced reserve of in lieu parkland funds. So the forecast for this new development, for new developments in the upcoming 26 and 27 budget is also very conservative. So this results in a reduction of PROS-related projects in this upcoming cycle. So moving to the next fund, the sales tax measure O. So this was a bond measure from 2023, which includes a half-cent transaction and use tax. It's estimated to bring in about $12.5 million per year. Donations. So the city has an agreement with the Walnut Creek Aquatics Group for a $3 million donation over 10 years for the community, the Everett Farm Community and Aquatics Center. And other revenues, so this includes financing. So in order to build the Heather Farm Community and Aquatic Center, there's going to be some debt service required to fund that project. So looking at the projects here, this is the project list for the 26-27 capital budget. We have the parks infrastructure repairs for $400,000, the open space infrastructure repairs for $150,000, median upgrades for $200,000, and the large project is the Heather Farm Park Aquatic and Community Center for $77 million. That's the bulk of the capital budget for this next cycle.
Can I interrupt here?
Yeah.
Hi. So when I was reading through your report in advance, I was wondering how are median upgrades related to Parks and Rec?
There's greenery in the medians, and that's funded as an asset management with general funds. So it's not funded through the in lieu parks, or it's funded for general funds for the beautification of the medians.
And is it mainly on roads, or is it also in business parks, or and also is it incorporating I forget the number, like C3, whatever it's called, the stormwater. Is it incorporating like swales and things like that for stormwater, or is it really just the beautification of roads?
It's more the beautification of roads. We have the separate funding for the C3 work typically. Mike,
Yeah, so typically it's in here because the park staff maintains the medians and greenways, and those would be all of the city-owned greenways. Sometimes we refer to them as lineal parks. If you're walking along YVR or something along those lines, and the $200,000 is more so for improvements, the aging infrastructure, and so that's generally why it's listed in here, because it's managed under the same division.
And is there a policy about, say, the native plants or drought tolerant, or?
It's not a formal policy, but a policy that we do our best to adhere to, certainly in regards to irrigation consumption. We're putting in all new irrigation systems. In fact, some of the systems we're replacing on YVR were put in the late 70s. And it's you know, we always work to improve the infrastructure. It's just so difficult for lane closures and shutting the roads down if the irrigation system's working. But we're now at the point where it's probably 95% native, drought-tolerant plant material and the new irrigation systems. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
All right, we can move to the next slide here. So I'm going to go over each of the projects in the capital budget, pros projects. So the first one is the park infrastructure repairs. This is an asset management project. City maintains 22 parks, 10 miles of paved trails. Under the Municipal Maintenance Master Plan, MMP provides a schedule for the long-term maintenance and replacement of irrigation components, paved trails, tree plantings, fencing, playground equipment repairs, sports field surfacing, and other improvements. This includes sustainable improvements that will reduce water usage. Another project is the open space infrastructure repairs. This is another asset management project. So this project will improve in the open space infrastructure facilities, including the grazing program, preserving the current stock ponds, new signage, trail markings, unpaved trail repairs, pedestrian bridge repairs, restoring various areas throughout the open space, and other projects as needed. And the median upgrades. This is another asset management project. So under the Municipal Maintenance Plan, MMP provides a schedule for long-term maintenance or replacement of median landscaping and hardscaping. This project includes median renovations that would lower maintenance, reduce worker exposure to traffic, and create more sustainable landscape beds. And the Heather Farm Park Aquatic and Community Center. So this is a discretionary project. It's going to combine the swim center and the community center into a single facility at Heather Farm Park. So the center will offer flexible spaces for health, fitness, education, and camps. So the current status, the design concept has been approved, and we're moving toward final design. We're currently working with the environmental agencies, getting approvals and working on mitigation measures. And that's it for the capital improvement projects. I'm open to questions and comments on the proposed 26-27 Parks and Recreation open space projects.
Thank you, Alex. Just so we're clear, can we direct questions kind of regarding everything we have in front of us to you, or, is this,
Yeah, I
yeah,
would say,
you feel comfortable? Because you're going to get it, I think, but in terms of like, what, some of the other things in our packets are Arboleto Park, the bocce courts at Larkey and Rudgear and all that stuff. So there's a lot that we have, is my point.
yeah,
I just wondered.
that's a CIP, so I'm going through the capital budget first.
Great.
These are
Okay, so
projects
we're gonna
that's
take
be
things
funded, and
step by step.
Then we'll go through the CIP, so I don't want
Okay.
to do everything at the same time, so.
That's fair. Well, having heard that, does anybody have any questions, comments regarding the CIP, which is kind of the first jump?
Capital budget.
Sorry, the capital budget, the first jumping off point, right? What Alex just talked to us about.
Are we going to get into more details about the capital budget?
I would assume so. That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out,
Yeah.
what the process of what we're gonna.
Yeah, the capital, the
Right.
capital budget, just the projects I presented under Parks and Recreation Open Space. There's a lot more projects, but that involves like different like traffic projects and other asset management projects.
No, I meant just within the pros commission responsibility.
Yes.
We are going to get more details.
No, I think this is
Okay.
what you can get for that.
Then, yeah.
Then I guess,
Yeah.
we'll fire away.
Okay, yeah.
So can I just add one thing real quick? So we made the decision to break it up for a couple reasons. One is sometimes these presentations can be long enough that you forget a portion of what was spoken about, shared in the capital budget side. So we wanted to focus on the capital budget and then provide the CIP afterwards. And if then you have more questions about the capital budget, we can open it up to even further. What I think you might be alluding to, in past years, we may have had 6 or 7 projects in the capital budget due to some of the funding shortages in the Park and Lou Fund. We're limited to just a few projects this year, and Alex will share more of that when he gets into the CIP. Is that,
I think that, yeah, because I definitely want to make some comments about the 2-year capital budget and where that money is going.
okay? Yeah.
So wait on that.
Oh, now.
Yeah,
No, let's do that now, yes? Because we're breaking it up.
yes, let's do that now.
Right.
Yep.
Otherwise, it'll get lost once we get
Yeah,
into
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I just have a question of timing. So on the 11th, City Council meets to discuss the council priorities for 2025 to 27. Okay? So that is the exact time period for the capital budget, mid-25 to mid-27, right? We submitted through a discussion and, bullet points from that, our input to the city council on our priorities, our perspective on priorities. Not just for pros, it could be the broader top 5, that exist already. But in the case of pros, most of the things that were submitted to the council for the February 11th meeting were park, recreation, and open space ideas and comments we had made. But we don't know what their priorities are going to be until after the meeting. So it seems a little cart before the horse to discuss now the funding for 2025 to 27 and the prioritization of those, the funding, when we don't even know where the council is on the types of things that we think are priorities. So that's my first point, okay? But then if you dig into the list that is part of the quarterly meeting, I noticed in the attachment that's going to council, there are items that are completely ignored in the capital budget that we place priorities on. And there are items that we really don't know what the council's going to think of them. And if we're allocating money, and if we're suggesting to allocate money and agreeing to make that recommendation tonight, it could be for something that is no longer a priority from a council perspective. So I'll stop there for the time being, but I want to come back to it because there are things that are completely ignored in the capital budget.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for the comments. It's a little challenging in the sense that we meet every other month. If we were to meet in March, we would probably, well, in this example, in the current year, we would know exactly what council had said in terms of their priorities and in the direction that they were heading. The council priorities that all of the commissions shared was summarized. It was shared with city council. In fact, the chair was at a breakfast with the mayor last Friday and also represented some other projects that were taking place in the parks along with these priorities. Council knows what the priorities are. However, we don't know what council priorities are, to your point. If we were meeting, and one of the challenges is the capital budget has to be in draft form and wrapped up by April. And so the way that our meetings are scheduled, we don't have the opportunity, unless we were to call a special meeting, which is maybe something we could consider next year, is not potentially postponing the February meeting to March, assuming, well, it wouldn't be next year, it would be 2 years from now when the capital budget came back up. But it's a good point. I completely understand what you're referring to. It's just challenging based on our scheduling.
I anticipated that was going to be what the logic was in terms of why we're doing this now. But I feel like we still need to be vocal about those things that we want some money behind, because if there's no money behind them, there's no way it's going to ever happen.
And that's a great, sorry, did you want to share?
Yeah.
That's exactly why Alex brought this tonight as a study session, is because this is exact feedback we want to get. If there are things that you want to discuss further, ask more questions about, make suggestions on funding, different funding allocations or different funding sources, we want to hear that tonight. Because this information tonight is also going to get wrapped up in a package and given to council as well.
I understand, and I don't want to dominate this discussion. I want everybody, to participate, but I do have some points I want to make in the course of the discussion. Okay?
So let's just bring it back real quick to the points that Alex made about the capital budget specifically, the, work on the median, asset management, open space, stuff like that. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the capital budget improvements?
I do. I was just wondering how you prioritize the projects. I mean, you gave a list of examples of the kinds of things that are covered, but it's not really projects yet. So I'm curious, like, and this is all maintenance or repair, basically, for the most part, renewal and replacement type of things. It's nothing new, right? So I'm just curious, like, what is your process internally for prioritizing what needs to get done? Assuming safety is important, but what other things do you consider?
We definitely have to look at funding availability. I think with the reduction of in lieu parkland fees, there really wasn't much funding to go around with different projects, and we knew that Hedda Farm Aquatic Center was a priority, so that needed to get funded. The Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and the median, these are like maintenance projects that needs to get done and needs to get funded for.
I know, I think you said you have a plan, right? You have a maintenance plan. I'm asking you,
Yeah.
how do you prioritize things within that maintenance plan? The life of the facilities, the, just, complaints you get that something's broken, or just, how are you going to prioritize your $400,000?
Let Mike take on that one.
Sorry, I feel like I'm hijacking your presentation here. So it's all of what you just said. Some of it is complaint-driven, but the vast majority is through our MMP. So our MMP, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, our maintenance master plan, every asset within our park system, in fact, every asset within most of the city, including our street infrastructure, our storm drainage system, is identified in a software program that we manage. And we can pull up when that equipment was installed, what the estimated life expectancy is, and when that equipment should be replaced. For example, 2 years ago, this commission recommended that we replace, they voted to move forward with staff's recommendation to replace the playground structure at Civic in Walden. Both of those were put in 97. They reached their useful life. We're spending more time maintaining them. We were getting a lot of feedback from the community. That became a higher priority. And so that's how we prioritize the work. It's probably 80% through the MMP, and then there's some challenges that staff have with some certain things. There's ADA challenges, and then it's also complaint-driven. Some of this equipment is just aged out in terms of the new generation and what's more interesting to them. Yep.
So I have more of like specific questions. So for the park infrastructure repairs, is that the Walden Park, the Civic Park that we heard about, and also the Arborado, the courts, the tennis courts? No.
Yeah, so the presentation I gave a couple meetings ago, where we are getting draft designs that we're going to be bringing back to the community and the commission to redo the playground at Civic Park and redo the playground at Walden, that was funded in a previous cycle. So that work's ongoing right now. And the courts at Arbolado have already been funded. That project goes out to bid this week. and will likely be in construction this summer. So that is that's from the previous cycle. What we're talking about today is what are the recommendations from the commission in the 25, 27 two-year work period, two-year budget period. What is this commission recommending? And to share a little bit more information on that, because this is a study session, there are a number of comments in terms of education, creek restoration, infrastructure repairs that are tied into that 400,000 and that 150,000 for the open space. It's signage. It's new materials that we're going to be purchasing. We heard from this commission that they would love to see an increase in educational opportunities in the open space. And so there are new materials that we are going to buy, assuming this $150,000 is approved. There's infrastructure out in the open space in terms of old irrigation systems. There's new bridges we're putting in. There's bridges where we're going to be replacing. There's gates and all kinds of things that are going on. It's the same in the park system. We've got to redo a couple of the sand volleyball courts that have just aged out, don't drain very well. It's a little dry season, but we know that they're not draining very well. So it's more of it's a maintenance type project, but it's also enhancing that capital budget item and the infrastructure. There's tree planting. Tree planting is going to be, over the next two-year budget cycle, is going to be huge. It's probably going to be $80,000 to $100,000 that we're going to invest in planting trees around the city. That doesn't mean I don't want to get ahead of this and say we're going to plant 1,000 trees. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes into planting trees and making sure those trees are going to survive without somebody hand watering those trees every month. So a lot of this funding is going to go into the environment in terms of tree planting, those types of things. Unhoused, there's a couple other items, sorry.
Go.
Ryan.
This is great.
There's unhoused, that was brought up from this group. Pickleball, those are really items outside of the park and recreation, outside of what the staff can do at this level. It's more of an executive team, city manager's office and PD that's working closely with the unhoused. We realize it's a priority for this commission. And then with the pickleball, that's an ongoing challenge. We're not going to solve that in this budget cycle, I don't believe so.
Before we leave this in lieu fee issue, is that, you're constrained by that you can't use general funds for park projects? So the Public Works Department, it looks like Rich might get up here and chat a little bit more about the overall capital budget and the general fund funding. The city does, or the Public Works Department supports staff, the other divisions and other departments in capital budget projects. And I'll let Rich speak to that.
Good evening, Commissioners. Rich Payne, Public Works Director. So I just, the information that you're hearing today is a couple of things with regard to the capital budget. 2 years ago, this commission looked at the 10-year CIP, and you actually approved some of the projects that were in that CIP. So when you're looking at some of this stuff, these projects were pulled out of the things that the projects that you've already approved. In addition to that, as Mike mentioned, maintenance has a list of needs that they also have to be included in this budget outside their operational budget. So when you're looking at the projects that are up here, most of them, and general fund related projects, most of them are non-discretionary projects. Those are projects that are improving our existing infrastructure. Any new projects, we have to find another funding source. Sometimes it's at Park and Lieu. In this case, the community said, hey, we want a new community center, so we're going to vote in an extra sales tax to fund that, along with some other things. So when you're looking at this project, there's this distinction. When you look those, when you're looking at those items, the 400,000, the 150,000, the medium upgrades, those are all non-discretionary projects that need to be added so that we so that we can continue to maintain our existing infrastructure.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
But the in lieu fee is really tied to new residential development, but it's
Yes.
being used for maintenance of existing facilities.
So the in
Potentially
lieu
some
fee can-
upgrade as
yes.
well, but-
So, yeah, exactly. And when we're looking at the park projects, we're looking at enhancements to the existing. And that's how we're using and justifying using in lieu fee. So,
So recognizing that our capital budget and for that matter, CIP, for those things that we're most interested in is typically capped by the in lieu parkland funds. That's been our guidance all along. But with Measure O, there are additional funds that are flowing besides the pool and community center replacement that if the right priorities are assigned to them, could get supported in our recommendation. Is that correct?
correct. And you have weighed in on some of those. We have the lighting project out at Tice and the two synthetic fill projects. So that funding came from this commission and the community when those were decided.
Right, but to take it to the next step of Measure O-related funds from now on, during the period where those funds are incoming from the 10-year, is it 10-year?
Yeah, it's 2034, I think
yeah,
it
okay.
sunsets, yeah.
It's possible that if council agrees with a priority and a fund amount that we recommend, that could be designated out of, not just in lieu, but out of Measure O funds.
That is correct. I will just add, though,
Mhm.
that Measure O funding was pretty well, defined in terms of what it was being used for. And if there's extra funding related to that Measure O, then that would be an option. But right now, it's dedicated for certain projects, and we're really focused on those projects at the moment.
I understand.
So,
I have another question, sorry,
Go ahead.
for me or Alex?
for you,
Okay.
or Mike. But, I know the city has a grants program, tries to get grants from other institutions to help pay for some of our projects. Where does most of those require matching funds? And does the matching fund have to come out of the in lieu? Or does that come from somewhere else? Or is it project specific?
So it depends. For instance, I'll just use an example, CDBG money. We get funding for doing projects like we're looking at around the community center right now. There are times when we use some of the general fund to match, to fund, to enable those projects to happen. Sometimes the funding for grants are a little bit short, and so we'll incorporate some of that park and lieu funding and other sources. But we try to use, if there is a matching fund to make an improvement in our park, we try to use that park and lieu funding for those types of priorities.
I have a quick question. I don't know if you know the answer. I hate to put you on the spot, anybody, but what's the decrease roughly between the in lieu we're looking at now as in previous years? And I know the last cycle probably was not all that great as well, but we're at 630,000 now. I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was more than that, but it wasn't significantly more than that, no? Or does
Well-
anybody know?
Right.
I can share, and Alex may know as well, just based on the projects that the engineering team is dealing with right now, which is the two playground projects, which is somewhere around 500,000. The court resurfacing is about 800,000. That's what's been budgeted. And then there was also these infrastructure repair numbers were also in there as well. So you're talking closer to $2 million was allocated in the current 2-year cycle that we're in, just out of park and lieu. And then if you throw in there also the lights in synthetic turf that came out of, not all of it, a lot of it came out of Measure O and our public-private partnerships. There was some of that thrown in there too. So the current cycle that we're under now is about 2.5 million of Park and Lou, and then other sources, because of the lights and things, have it up probably closer to $5-6 million. So when we do get into the CIP portion of it, you'll see that there hasn't been a lot of development. That we haven't collected a lot of fees in Park and Lou. But going back to your comment, Art, I think if there are projects that this committee or this commission wants to recommend, I think it's worth hearing and making note of those as you know, as we move through this process.
Yeah. Do you want me to jump in or
Well-
let others?
No, what I want to do is put a pin in the capital budget part of it.
Yep.
Because Alex is going to tell
Yep.
us about so we'll be able to listen and then kind of respond to that.
Yep.
While I'm on that, does anyone else have any comments, questions regarding just what we're looking at essentially here with the capital budget stuff?
Yes.
Nope, no. Okay, please proceed.
Okay, all right. Okay, the 10-year capital investment program. So let's start with some background. The 10-year CIP is a planning document that provides vision and defines priorities. The 10-year CIP does not appropriate funds. That's done separately with the 2-year capital budget. And this is a dynamic document that builds on previous work. It's deliberately broad, which allows the city to identify, prioritize, and then schedule projects in 2-year cycles. So this slide here illustrates the various inputs that go into the development of the 10-year CIP. The CIP pulls from a variety of stakeholders, including staff, commission, and council. In addition, it pulls projects from adopted plans, including the parks master plans and asset management plans. Most importantly, this is a planning document and does not allocate funding. I'm going to go straight into the projects. So first here is the Header Farm Park Resilient Playground Surface Replacement. It's an asset management project. So the All Abilities Playground is a popular park which was constructed in 2014. At the time, it was expecting 200,000 visitors over 20 years. There's been a lot of expected wear and tear. And this project will perform a major renovation, replacing the surfacing and adding an additional 8 to 10 years of life. Next project here is the Header Farm Park Irrigation Reservoir Lining, and also the Header Farm Park Pump and Pond Irrigation Fountains. So this project will repair the leaks at the irrigation pond. This will reduce water loss. And then also, as a separate project, it's going to replace the irrigation pumps and the aeration pond pumps, which was built about 20 years ago. They typically only have about 10 years life, so they're due for replacement. Next project here is the ball field synthetic turf replacement. This is another asset management project. So the turf fields are scheduled to be installed this upcoming summer in 25. The heavy usage expected at this turf will allow additional programming time. So synthetic turf usually lasts about 8 to 10 years, and this project would perform a major renovation, giving their 8 to 10 years of life. The Clark Pool House and Pool House Repurposing Master Plan Construction. So this is a discretionary project. So with the scheduled completion of the new aquatic facility in 2027, the existing pool and pool house will be demolished and repurposed for other needs at Header Farm Park. So the plan is to, for phase 1, to create a master plan in 28-29, in 3031, start the design and construction for the first part of it, and then for the second phase, we'll do another design and construction for the second remaining part of the repurposed plan. The Civic Park Master Plan. So this was a part of the 2017-2018 capital budget to update the Civic Park Master Plan. So the project was on hold with the development of Your Parks, Your Future. And with this implementation of the synthetic turf field project, funding from this project was reallocated to fund the construction of that project and moved back into the CIP. So this project is now back in the CIP for consideration. The Abelardo Parks Improvement Project. So this project was included as part of the 22-23 capital budget for new park amenities at Abelardo Park. Again, this project, similar to the previous project, the funding from the capital budget was moved for the construction of the turf fields project, and then moved back into CIP for further evaluation. So plans are in development for this project and will be brought back to the public for review when completed. The Oak Old Park Improvements Project. So this is another discretionary project, and it was originally included in the 19 and 20 capital budget. With the implementation of the synthetic turf field project, the funding for this project was moved over to fund the construction of the turf field project, and moved back to the CIP, and will be again considered at a future date. So this park, not familiar with it, it's a 16-acre park at the north end of Rossmore Parkway. It's the only park to serve the Tice Valley area, along with Tice Valley Community Park. And the project will include new trails, view spots, and resting areas, as well as signage and expanded parking. And our project is the bocce ball courts at Larky and Red Deer Park. Back in 1920, there was a conceptual study done on these on the design, and then this is now in the CIP under two separate funding cycles for construction. Walden Park. So this is the Walden Park parking lot expansion and other discretionary projects. So this is a popular park known for its playground, disc golf, and easy access to Iron Horse Trail. Relatively small parking lot that serves this park. It's often full, so the proposal here is to expand the parking lot to the south to give better access to the park. So staff is seeking commission feedback and to prioritize the discretionary projects in the CIP. So some of the criteria may include any available outside funding, any internal funding availability, facility condition, and the community's desire. And this is the list of projects and where they're currently in the proposed plan CIP. So that concludes my presentation on the CIP, and I'm here to open for comments and feedback and prioritization of the 26 to 35 CIP.
Thanks, Alex. If anybody, everybody's okay with this, I think what we can maybe split this into a couple different ways to kind of approach this. And one, what I'd like to do maybe is just invite my fellow commissioners to get some clarification and maybe ask some questions about exactly where the money's being spent and how that works and so forth. And then we can maybe transition into a broader conversation about this project versus that project and what's important. And does that make sense? Is that okay for everybody? So we kind of just don't get lost in the weeds, you know? We kind of move along those lines. Is that okay? Okay. So I'll just turn it over if anybody has any kind of bookkeeping questions or anything like that, just the general sense, because I think we've been, a lot of it's, when you're looking at it for the first time, can be, wait, I don't understand this exactly. So I'll welcome any questions. I have a couple myself, but I'll turn it over to the commissioners first. Okay, so I'll ask some of my questions. Can you help me explain, like, for instance, the synthetic turf, which are going in at Heather Farm, Fields 1 and 2, it's earmarked, though, for the years 34, 35? Is that just because, are we financing that and we're paying it off then? Or how, can you just explain, why wouldn't that be in the current year?
Yeah, that's for the future replacement of the synthetic turf, so.
Oh, we're already right,
Are you looking
the
for
turf that
that?
hasn't gone in yet?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
all right,
long-term,
now I
yeah.
get it, okay. Well, I guess that's forward thinking there. That didn't make sense to me. I can't wait to see the bleachers that are gonna go in there in that picture too, because that seems like it's a, no, I'm just giving you a hard time. What else did I have to ask? Please, somebody else jump in, because I'm looking at my notes.
So I do want to ask about a couple, three areas, just so we're clear. The three areas are creek restoration funds, pickleball, court construction, or whatever you want to call it. And the third one is public safety. It's the things that we can additionally do. I know we've done a lot, but additionally do to avoid vandalism through motor vehicles and things like that. Those three areas. Where are we in general sense of projects relating to those things?
So currently, and moving into the next 2-year cycle, and I'll just take the last one first, which is basically infrastructure, security for our infrastructure, I think I'll call it, because you guys have all seen pictures when someone drives the truck up on the turf and spins donuts, those types of things. We've had several problems in terms of vandalism at Heather Farm and Arbolado. Dival Shadows, some of these areas that are easily accessible. We have not had an issue at Arbolado Park in probably a year and a half because of the infrastructure that we've installed. Typically, you're seeing boulders, you're seeing more bollards, just more objects in the way. We are waiting for the pool project to start out at Heather Farm. As you know, the pool is going to creep into the turf area up closer to the All Abilities Playground, which is then going to fence a portion of that area off. We will then move forward, and if you can envision it, there is a landscape buffer between San Carlos and that paved road. We will be adding boulders and structures within that area, and then you'll see some lower fencing along Heather Drive, and as it turns back into the parking lot and along Heather Farm. That'll be funded out of that $400,000 of infrastructure improvements. Second, can you remind me of what the other one was, please? So creek restoration, I'll touch on that because I think we have a speaker here tonight that's going to also talk a little bit about that. For this current cycle, the city decided to move forward and basically support in the realm of about $25,000 the Walnut Creek watershed for improvements, basically invasive weed removal, which I'm sure Mr. Simmons can speak to when he's up here at public comment. We look forward to contributing to the same fashion of improving our Walnut Creek through Heather Farm, along with looking to remove the non-natives and invasive weeds that we identified in a plan that was put together maybe two cycles ago out at Heather Farm Park, where we did an analysis on the drainage areas and identified those areas. We're also going to be tackling that through this $400,000. That's some of those projects. I don't have them all laid out in front of me. I know that Commissioner Garland asked kind of how do you prioritize, and then maybe what those projects are. I can share those with you in the future, specifically how we're going to spend that $400,000. I don't have it here with me today, but those projects are going to take place in the next cycle.
And pickleball?
Pickleball, I don't have an answer for. I know that Director Safin is here, and he may be able to provide an update, but I think management is working through that challenge right now, and I'm not sure there's a lot to update. I know that in the past, we've identified some potential other locations to build new courts. That is all continuing to be discussed. And that's unfortunately about all I have for you at this time in regards to pickleball.
So no funds identified for any court construction?
In this budget cycle, there's no recommendation currently listed for new pickleball construction. That's correct. Now, if that's something, as I mentioned, if that's something that this commission thinks is important and want us to bring back to council as we summarize this meeting, by all means.
Okay. Well, count me in on that. Okay, thank you.
I have one comment. I would actually like to see the planning for the repurposing of the Clark Center moved forward. I understand it's in the 2-year cycle following the completion of the new pool, but unless you just don't have enough staff to handle that at the same time that construction project's going on, it seems like the public would be better served by doing something sooner rather than later with that, very large portion of Heather Farm. So I would propose that get moved forward if it's possible.
I'll ask a question to your, is that in place where it is because we need it to exist while the new structure is being built? That was my thought.
It's planning, though. Even starting the plan for it is after the new one is completely done.
Is that what we're calling it?
Well, there's 3, if you look at the breakdown of it, right, it shows,
Oh, we're planning. Well, that's a expensive plan, don't you think?
well, no, it's planning and construction.
You're saying start the
I'm saying in
planning earlier.
2020, the 250,000 is a plan,
Right.
and that's not starting until 28, 29,
Which is after the new pool is open.
in 27, right?
Yeah, and we'll note it. Yeah, we'll definitely note it. Yep.
Just saying, following up on that point, I also agree with the idea that it would be nice to have the years in place that we have now, at least for Heather Farm and the All Abilities Playground resurfacing, the irrigation pumps. I think they're all in the 27, 28. Reason being is that one day there won't be construction crews there, right? And it would be nice to just put a pin in it, tie a bow on it, and then let the community enjoy it for a couple of years rather than, okay, it's now another 2 years, now we're doing this, and now it's another 2 years, we're doing this. So, kind of rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak, over at Heather Farm. So I'm in favor of keeping the years as they are. But to Commissioner Garland's point, it makes sense to at least move up the planning for the Clark pool. I've got more to say, but I just wanted to
Quick
make that
response
point.
to that. I think it's just a matter of if we can find the funding, because in the capital budget right now, the funds are already pretty much tied up. So we need to find another 250 to supplement for that cost.
But it is noted, and we'll share that information. Yeah.
Okay, bocce. Was there how does bocce make the list of priorities?
So some of you have been on this commission for a while and seen several of these projects funded already, and due to some shortfall in funding for the synthetic turf project, there were some projects that we hadn't started and some that were on the books with some funding remaining, that we ended up closing those projects and diverting that money to help budget for the synthetic turf. And that's why you're seeing some of these. And I'll just go through them real quick just to give you a better idea. So Arbolado Park, 2 cycles ago, there was $50,000 that was set aside to do a planning process with a commissioner or two in the neighborhood and some of the other stakeholders in that area. That $50,000, the decision was made, council supported to, that money was going to roll back in as all these projects I'm going to go through. The $400,000 that is listed in there now was funding that was anticipated would have come out of that planning process. So it's about 1.5 acres that we were going to consider planning for. To redevelop 1.5 acres is somewhere around, $300,000 to $500,000, depending on what you want to do. That's what you're seeing in there. But the money that was pulled aside and put into synthetic turf was $50,000. So as part of this new improvement, we would still have to go out and meet with the community in the future and go through a planning process to make sure that everybody was engaged. Old Oak Park, there was $25,000 set aside. This goes back to the 17-18, I believe, so it's several years old now. We had not been able to move that up on the priority list, and quite frankly, we could have probably had a more thorough process with the neighborhood before we started that project. It had already been funded. We had filed the CADX, the CEQA information, and we just hadn't got around to it. It was really just a dirt pathway that we were going to do in a figure 8 to allow for some more hiking up there in that area. So that was at $25,000. As part of this 150, what you're seeing in there, this goes back, Art, I believe you remember this, when each commissioner was assigned a feature park, and it was Commissioner Ludwig who had Old Oak Park, and we were looking at developing these parks in a much grander scheme than they are today, and this included a parking lot. And that's why you're seeing a much larger number than just the 25 that was set aside for the walking path. The bocce courts was a project that Public Works partnered with Arts and Rec, and some commissioners served on, and we did a large survey throughout the community. We moved forward and hired a designer to design 2 bocce courts in Larkey and 2 in Rudgear. And we had about $30,000 remaining after the consultant was done with that design. Those designs still exist. Building those courts didn't become a priority. I think pickleball was picking up right around that time, and we knew the impacts that were taking place at Rudgear and thought maybe we should kind of reassess the amount of usage over there at Rudgear, and I think we just paused on that.
And the estimates of the construction were much higher than we thought they'd be.
Much higher. Thank you. You're absolutely right. And then Walden was never funded. That's a project that's been on the books for a while. And then the Civic Park, Heather Farm Park Master Plan. This was one of the feature parks that Tom Worthy, the past chair, was involved in. And we were looking at kind of revamping or taking a new look at Civic Park, and including to the extreme of moving the playground to the other side of the park to try and spread out the usage. And because of the council's priority for infrastructure improvements, which ultimately led to the pool and synthetic turf, this project was put on pause. And approximately $300,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood went back into the funding the synthetic turf. And so we didn't want to just wipe these out because they were important to the commission in the past. So the goal was to bring these back, just put them in later years, and rehab these conversations in the future. Yeah.
Well, I'll just second Commissioner Oller's comment regarding the pickleball, picking that back up and, maybe add a pickleball master plan.
What I'd like is to open up to the commissioners to kind of give us general thoughts here, because as Commissioner Oller said, the train is leaving the station with the city council is going to prioritize over the next 2 years. And so I'm sure they're all watching this on their couches at home right now, listening to us. But if they aren't, they're still going to hear our input regarding what we talked about, Commissioners Garland's suggestion that we move Clark up, maybe 2 years. What do you guys think about Civic Park? Are bocce courts an important thing? I've been on this commission so long that the bocce's come and gone 2 or 3 times now. And it always kind of gets kicked down, when other things come up. But is this the time we say, you know what, it's time to put some new bocce courts at Rugby or Larky? So that's kind of what we're looking for right now is when you look at this, what does this say to you? What do you like prioritizing and not? And just, give us your honest feedback about what you think. So I welcome your suggestions.
Sorry, you probably said the same thing. Sorry, Kevin Savine, Director of Arts and Recreation, just trying to make sure your process goes smoothly. There's a lot going on at the dais. I believe you have a member of the public who wishes to make a comment. I would suggest from staff, you take the public on before you all deliberate so you can hear from the public. So sorry to jump in. I apologize.
Does any member of the public wish to come and speak at this time? Sorry, Bob.
Good evening, Chair Moran, members of the Commission. My name is Bob Simmons. I am here tonight as President of the Walnut Creek Watershed Council. For those not familiar with it, the Walnut Creek Watershed is 146 square miles in size. It includes parts of 9 cities and towns in Contra Costa County. It is the largest watershed in Contra Costa County. I said 9 cities and towns are partly in it. There's only 19 towns total, cities and towns total in the watershed. I'm going to be mentioning something that the Watershed Council has done in 2024. 2 of them directly relate to, from my perspective, to things that the Commission needs to be thinking about going forward. And the first one is in 2024, we completed an identification of high and medium priority restoration sites in the watershed. Those are all really in the developed area of the watershed because it was a community-led activity. It wasn't staff-supported or anything like that. And, we were identifying the places that we knew the best. We identified some in Walnut Creek, some in the open space, and some that are in private ownership, let's say. And those are important to be thinking about as we're going forward. The second thing we did is we applied for a Bureau of Reclamation Watersmart grant for planning and creating a watershed restoration plan, the first ever plan that would be done for the Walnut Creek watershed. Early January, we got notice that we'd been approved. It doesn't mean allocate or anything like that. And then, we're not too sure what's going to happen going forward, but that's the way things are. The third thing that I wanted to mention is, and this is important for what I'll call fish people in particular, and you do have fishing at in Heather Farm Park, is that through our advocacy, our quiet advocacy, when we weren't pounding on drums or anything like that, the Flood Control District decided to ask the Army Corps of Engineers to study alternatives for fish passage at what's called drop structure number 1. Drop structure number 1 is the first barrier to fish passage for salmon coming up from Suisun Bay, from the ocean, and it is a complete barrier to that fish passage. I've been there at the base of drop number 1 and seen salmon there, seen 20, 25-inch Chinook salmon there. They can't get above, they're poached. And so we're really happy that the Flood Control District, which has always historically said, no, we can't do anything at all, has written to the Corps of Engineers. Again, we're not sure what the result will be, but the initial response of the Corps was really positive. The latter one doesn't really relate too much directly to Walnut Creek, other than I could note that in the 1940s, you could fish in downtown Walnut Creek. And that was a long time ago. So how do I want to, now I have to look at my notes. When I looked at the proposed CIP for 2026 to 35, I didn't see any creek restoration project, wetland restoration project in any manner, shape, or form. And I think that is disturbing for me as a creek and watershed person. I think it should be disturbing for you as well. If you're a climate change person, it is also significant because creeks and wetlands are where your wildlife live, where you have the greatest growth of vegetation because you have moisture there, so you have the most carbon sequestration that you can possibly get. And so it's important for when you're looking at a planning document like this to think about, well, what do we want our creeks and our wetlands and our watershed to be like in 5 or 10 years? Because right now, it's not going to be any different really than it is today. And you do have, and I appreciate the funding that the staff has provided to us, and we've used it to remove, takes about 5 times to get it done, remove a particularly bad invasive species that causes flooding and is a fire risk. And we're doing pretty well on that, but there's still a ways to go. And staff did a fairly nice job in Shellridge and project near Indian Pond. But there's a lot more sites. There's Hazard Pond down in the southern part of Shellridge. There's Rock Oak. There's actually a creek in Red Gear that is heavily infested with ivy. And for those of you not familiar with ivy, if you want rats, you plant ivy. It's that simple. The other thing we found from Civic Park, once we removed the ivy, and another group came in and planted some native plants, flowering plants, the woman that has been walking that particular section has said the number of butterflies has exploded, both species and number. Why is that? Because the ivy interferes with the part of the life cycle of most butterflies, and so it's really important to do. So going forward, I wanted to mention a couple things besides just identifying restoration projects and prioritizing them, which I think is an important function of both staff and the commission in Walnut Creek. And I hope that's one of the things you talk about and go on. I'll also mention, though, the 1993 Creek Master Plan. You know, when you get to 2035, it's going to be 40 years old. A lot of things have changed in those 40 years, and you know, we've buried a lot of creeks, and not that the city has buried creeks, but I mean, it has happened. And so we really need to have a look at that plan and maybe a wholesale complete redo of the plan, of the Creek Master Plan, because of it's 40 years old. The city was really a leader in doing it back in the early 90s, but it's time to take another look at it. So I'll just conclude on this part of it by saying creek rest. I hope, well, I was going to say creek restoration is really expensive, and so when you start looking at $150,000, that little section by the library that we've been working on, and we're now in the 5th year of it, which is the final year, it's about $175,000. And so, you know, creek restoration is really expensive. The city's getting quite a deal with us for getting rid of the Arundo in Civic Park, and we got some more work to do there. But when you work with contractors in some of the places in the creeks that are really steep, you have to work with contractors. You can't work with volunteers. It does cost a lot of money. Plus you have, anyhow. What I hope you do out of this is that you communicate to staff and the council that restoring our creeks, restoring our watershed, restoring and creating wetlands and expanding wetlands is really important for the city to be thinking about. And I mention that from the standpoint that I come from the Walnut Creek Watershed Council. Most people don't, when you say Walnut Creek Watershed, they just think about the city of Walnut Creek. But it's the same name. The creek starts here. It starts by Ilford and Isle. And I think it's really important for Walnut Creek, the city of Walnut Creek, to show some leadership in creek and watershed restoration. I wanted to mention one other thing for you to think about going forward, because I'm also, as staff knows, a trail person. And I'm going to mention sort of 3 trails. And as you look forward to the next 10 years. So the 3 I want to mention, one is a trail connection from the Iron Horse Trail to Sugarloaf Open Space, going through the Red Gear Park and Ride. Why is it important? You're getting a lot more people downtown. People want to get on a bike. They don't want to just ride on the Iron Horse. This would get them access into Sugarloaf for bike riding. It'd also be a better parking spot. The second one is to create a paved path through the Kubitschek Detention Basin, which is next to Northgate High School. So the bikes would not have to go on Northgate Road to get to Mount Diablo State Park. The state park has done a wonderful job with making improvements to that roadway to make it safer, but the Kubitschek Detention Basin, over which the city, by the way, has a conservation easement that it purchased many years ago, would be an excellent amenity. Would also connect the Shell Ridge to Sugarloaf Trail, which is presently now, you have to walk along Northgate Road if you really want to do that particular section. The last one is really not really a recreation one so much as to improve the tunnel underneath Ignacio Valley Road that presently doesn't really allow you to ride your bike through it, doesn't really allow two people to walk side by side. That's a big project, but to me, the selling point is not a recreation park, but really to make it more of a commuting vehicle to enable people that live east of Walnut Creek to get access to the Contra Costa Canal Trail and to BART for heading into the city. So thank you so much for your service. By the way, I'll just note that for those of you afraid of these things, I started in your seat some 25 years ago. You know, it's a great experience, and so I hope you're all enjoying the time that you have here. It's a wonderful job you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Does anybody have any follow-up questions for Mr. Simmons? Bob, I do. Can you? I don't want to put you in the spot, but thank you
But
very
you
much
are.
for your. I always enjoy the updates to the watershed.
Thank you.
I know you said it's an expensive proposition, just watershed maintenance and so forth, but is there a priority in your mind, you know, if the city council is looking for what we can control in the city itself? You know, I know the library stretch there is being worked on and so forth, and you know what better than most. I mean, just and I don't need an answer, but you know, just while I've
Well,
got you, just I'm curious.
I'll give a response. Whether
Yeah.
it's an answer or not
Sure,
is a
sure.
different matter. And part of it depends if you give me 500, not me, but if you allocate 500,000, that's sort of one answer. If you allocate 2 million, that's a different answer. And literally, these are all things that done. But let me take just a minute and say what was done with regard to the Indian Creek improvements. And when the mud is gone, if you haven't been down there, you should go down there because the city did a nice job. It wasn't quite the way I would have done it, but they did a nice job. I would have taken the trail out of the creek entirely. It's just, but Mike knows that. There was a cooperation between the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation and the city because the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation funded the concept work that was done in order to, and then the city came in and instead of going with a contractor, which probably would have cost 2 or 3 times as much, they did it through staff. And so, I mean, it worked really well. It was done relatively inexpensively, and it looks nice, and I'm looking forward to seeing it with water. But that's probably at the low end of what you can do with any type of thing. If you go to Hazard Pond, which to me is probably has the biggest opportunity for creating a much larger wetland area than is there now, it probably needs to be soil needs to be removed from it so that functions more as a wetland. That would probably be my number one. But that's a large one, and I can come up with smaller ones, you know, at a different time. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Does anybody have comments we'd like to share just regarding the CIP and different projects? Questions for Alex? All our other staff in the room? Anybody?
Yeah, I have a comment. So when I polled the citizens of Walnut Creek about their thoughts on the priorities for pros for the next year, some of them talked about the opportunities and access to community gardens. I don't know how that will work into the CIP. I know at Heather Farm, we currently have that opportunity, but I'm wondering if Civic Park, there's any potential sites there that we could explore and whether that could be part of the master plan update that's in the current CIP. I just want to put that out there.
How Homestead Park has some gardens as well, right? Those are city, and what's the process for somebody renting space, a garden space there?
So those are, that's a great community garden. I don't know if you've been out there, but it's definitely worth getting out to. These people kind of dress it up and have like their own little art show out there. Their plots are 625 square feet, so they're large. They're about $150 per year to lease, and there's a waiting list of about 5 years. And so the best thing to do is to reach out to myself or Ranger Janke and let him or myself know that you're interested in the list, and we put it on the list. And as plots become available, we reach out to the people on the list to see if they're interested.
Well, I'd like to be more specific about creek restoration, but I don't know a dollar amount to put on it as a recommendation. And I don't know how to define it. I mean, there are various ways to go about it, but it's a very, I think it's bigger than us. It's bigger than pros. It's really the whole Walnut Creek, and for that it's City Council. And I'd like to think that it could be high on their list of priorities, but I just don't know. I certainly think that we have great advocates for it in Bob and in Leslie Hunt. Both have been involved in it quite some time and have done countless hours of work. But without visibility in the CIP, without visibility in the capital budget, I value the things that the city is already planning on doing, but I think that we really need to take it much higher to really make it effective and make it something that the community in general can be very proud of it. And this is going to take years, and it's going to take a lot of money. And I just don't know exactly how to tee that up in the context of what we're doing tonight.
Can I respond to that? Because I don't know the answer to that either. I've made several notes here, and we've got a number of projects that we need to work on this year. Bob always brings value input to these types of conversations. And I mean, there could be a recommendation. Bob's right. The plans are old, need to be updated. The commission could have a recommendation that we want to set. Because I don't know the number either, $100,000 or $150,000 aside, whether it's this cycle or the next cycle, to hire a consultant to come in and work with the commission and work with the community stakeholders to update the plan. And so we actually have something to work towards where we can identify small projects as we move through. So, because it's a massive project, as you can imagine.
And your recommendation, or your, kind of trying to put some structure on that, is totally in keeping with the Walnut Creek way of successful large projects. I mean, you've got to develop a big plan with a lot of involvement, a lot of input and involvement, and this one is not something we can do in a vacuum. It involves surrounding communities and the Watershed Council and flood control and the potentially Army Corps of Engineers, you name it, any organization that touches water. And there are a lot of organizations that touch water around here would have to be involved. But I think it's something that we should start that process, get back to the planning phase of how to do this.
Noted.
I'll second that. Yeah, I think 1993 certainly was a long time ago, and that's the last piece of paper that we're working off of. Then I think Bob does have a point, because the word creek is in the city's name, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that. My thoughts, which I'd like to be noted for the council and staff, are that, as I mentioned before, keeping the idea of Heather Farm being quote unquote completed, and that means more than just the new swim center, but the existing Clark Swim Center, the all abilities, the irrigation pumps, just to be able to kind of not have an ongoing construction site there for the next 12 years. If we're looking at moving things around, whether it's this year or next or what have you, I've been on this commission so long that I remember when we did the Civic Park Master Plan update, back in 2017, and it's now kicked to 32, 33. To Commissioner Pinkstaff's point, and also some of the discussions we've had just about the creeks, is that Civic Park, and I made this point 2 months ago, is that it could and is somewhat the crown jewel of the city, and will only continue to be so because of all of the influx of people that we're going to have and have now in the downtown area who live in multifamily housing and do not have backyards. And so the idea of moving up, in my opinion, the Civic Park Master Plan in order to facilitate whatever that looks like, because the opportunity is there, right? Well, I don't know what we do with the cars, but there's the real estate is there. We've got a creek running through it. The location is impeccable. It's next to the library, and it needs some love. And I think that's the next big part that the city could tackle. And I'd hate to see we wait for another 7 years before we get around to that. And then the last thing I'll say is I'm fine with all of the things that we have on here, and the reason why is because if you look, at some of this it's just been years and years and years of we'll get to it. The bocce courts are a great example of that. I know it's I'd hate to see it get kicked down the road if the money isn't there, and I understand there are more important things, but a lot of these have been in the hopper for many years. And so to see it on paper again is great, but it would be nice to be able to commit to it rather than 20 years from now saying, wouldn't it be great to do some bocce courts over at Red Gear and Larky, So as much as, we can always wave our magic wand and materialize the money, I understand that. Keeping this list and actually acting on this, I think, is really important. But my point would be to be able to move up to Civic Park. And yeah, that's it. That's it for me.
I concur in that with the Civic Park. And also, that could combine creek restoration as part of the ideas for that as well. So I think that does several things. Plus, there's sustainability issues in there. And I remember us bringing up the fact that downtown has changed a lot, and we really need to be conscious of that in developing our open space and recreation facilities. So again, that's consistent with that priority we talked about at the last meeting. So, and so better hire some planners. But there are grant monies too. The California State Department of, oh my God, drawing a blank. The parks, the people who do the parks, they often have grant programs. And, there's definitely, like Bob was saying, they got the Water Smart grant. And again, who knows what the federal government will do with monies like that. But nonetheless, it's a 10-year CIP. So, all is maybe not lost. So, yeah, I think it'd be nice to, make sure that some of these broader reaching things, I know we're kind of really focused on the Heather Farm complex, which is a huge undertaking and a big chunk of money. But it'd be nice to, kind of keep these other balls going as well.
Other thoughts? No? Okay.
Do you mind if I summarize what I heard then?
I not at all. Please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, work towards developing new courts or figuring out a solution for pickleball. Move the Clark Swim Center planning up 2 years in the CIP so we can start planning sooner. Look into further opportunities for community gardens throughout our park system and get that listed on the CIP. Move the Civic Park Master Plan up in the cycle. Seems like move it way up in the 10-year CIP is what I'm hearing. Work towards completing that park infrastructure, including those pumps, so we're not on construction forever out there. Potentially put some funding aside for Creek Master Plan update. And then the last one is look to continue to seek grant funding for some of these opportunities so that when we do get in a pinch with the park and lieu, that we have another funding source to help us through these. Did I capture everything? Yeah. The meeting's recorded if we didn't, so we'll make sure it's in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to call for any commissioner reports. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? I do not as well. Any staff reports?
Looks like Kevin Safine has one yet.
Apologies for making you watch me walk. For the record, Kevin Safine, Director of Arts and Recreation. I have a little slideshow. One of my other roles is to be like Mr. Vickers, so I am the staff to the Arts Commission. And so last Monday, the Commission approved public art for the new Heather Farm Aquatic and Community Center. They heard a report which summarized the entire process that the Commission went through to identify public art. There's a requirement of all private development. They put 1% of their construction into public art. The city is not exempt from that. So there's an expectation that the budget will include public art. So the budget for public art for this project is about $950,000. Significant. Staff went through a rigorous request for qualifications process last year, had about 160 artists respond to that, narrowed that down to about 30. The Arts Commission appointed a selection panel, which included Arts Commissioner, City Council member, members of the public. That group narrowed it down to 10, and then they invited 5 folks to present proposals, and they selected 3. So those 3 were approved last Monday by the Arts Commission. I will show you what they are. So the first is going to be, and if you're familiar, I'm sorry I didn't bring an overview of the project site, but if you're familiar with the design, it includes a lobby, an atrium, which is the entrance to the community center on one side and the aquatic center on the other side. So the first public art piece approved is up in the ceiling there. It's called Poppy. This would be as you enter from either side, the west or the east, you would see these poppy sculptures hanging from the ceiling, which would be both inviting and help to make the space look a little bit more vibrant. This is a piece designed by 2 artists from New York who have done this in other public and private facilities. So very exciting piece here. And this is what it would look like if you were sitting on your back looking up the ceiling. You'd see the poppies like this. It'll be both an interesting piece, also I think will help sell rentals and activity there a little bit more because it makes it a little more vibrant. So again, just another view of that. So, and this is what it would look like from the outside. The design is still somewhat in flux, but this is a good view of if you were outside the building, what it would look like lit from the inside. So that's the first one. The second one is a sculpture, which would be in the park itself, so not part of the project per se, but in the area between the playground and the pond. This is about a 10-foot tall sculpture by an artist out of Oregon. And she has come up with 3, and this is how you can see the scale, 3 different sculptures here using natural stone. One is that one on the left, which is about 10 feet tall, the other 10.5 feet tall, with granite on the bottom, and then other stones going up, and then 2 smaller pieces which would serve as benches in this process. This is what it conceivably could look like within the park itself. This would be engaging. The artist spoke to, she believes in having people touch art and interact with it, and so not just a hands off. So she sees people climbing, sitting, jumping on these pieces. So that's the second one. And then the third one is as you are coming into the main entrance to the facility from the east, this would be the drop-off side. On the left there, on the top, that's the bathhouse of the pool. So as people are entering the pool on the left, they would be seeing this mosaic, which is a glass tile piece, which is stretched about 40 feet in length. attached to the building. So this is a sample of what it could look like. The artist used this image in another piece, so he would not be doing this same piece here. It would be a new image. This artist is out of San Francisco. So he would be essentially creating an original piece here, again, made of glass mosaic, which will be attached to the building on that side. So all of this was taken into consideration by the Arts Commission. They approved it, and so they are the final say in public art. So we're moving forward with public art here. Artists will be working with the architects to engage in the design process. So I know this wasn't your part of your consideration for this evening, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them briefly.
Thank you. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
When's it going to go public?
Public in terms of the art pieces. So, well, officially it went public since it was a public meeting. I expect that when we continue to have updates to the community about where we are with the project, and I don't know if Director Payne's going to talk at all about the next steps and where we are with the project, we will continue to post updates on the website and share things through the city manager's monthly newsletters. Perhaps the Nutshell will include this. So as soon as we have something, I don't want to just do art itself, standalone, but I'd rather tell that story more broadly. So there'll be opportunities.
And then a kind of comment question-y thing. I noticed the large fans above the poppies.
Yes.
Are they meant to flow or are they static?
Yeah, they'll be static. The artist will work closely with the architect to make sure that both the radius of the fans do not hit the piece that it's hang down. The pieces are going to be rigid, so they will not be floating back and forth with the wind at all. That's the intent. We'll see.
And are they pink and yellow?
They are. I don't think pink necessarily. I think it's more of a
Is it more
natural
poppy?
to.
I think that is
Yeah, it'll be more
poppy?
orange, I would expect.
Okay.
That's anyway. It's probably gonna be more orange than pink, and that's my sense.
Poppy like the flower poppy, or
Correct.
yeah.
Yes.
Looks like a jellyfish too.
Eye of the beholder, yes, but poppies, their genesis was the poppies, the flower, the state flower.
Thanks, Kevin. Please pass our thank you on to the Arts Commission too. Great choices. Also, I'm glad that the second piece is hands-on, because it's going to be hands-on whether they want it to be or not.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Secretary Vickers, Rich, did you want to? No?
Good evening, Public Works Director Rich Payne. So just a couple things with regard to the Aquatics and Community Center facility. In terms of schedule, right now we have not received the regulatory permits for the project, but we are diligently working on them. And based on our discussions with them, they've given us an indication that it's plausible that we'll receive those by the end of March. And so we are working forward to move on the project. And we've broken it up into two phases as of right now. Phase one will be the demolition of a portion of the existing pond, and then also the expansion of the lake. And so that will involve dewatering the existing concrete pond around the community center, and in breaking up the bottom of the pond, if you will, so that we can put a footing in and accommodate the new edge line of the pond. The other portion, and it's also a large portion, is the expansion of the lake. And that will include about 16,000 surface area, expanding that much, and then along the path. So if you're familiar with the path that kind of goes along the north end of the pond down around the natural lake, that it almost follows that trail almost follows the edge line of the new expansion. So that's sort of our plan with regard to that area. You probably, if you've been down there, because of the nesting period, we tried to get some trees removed down there. Several of you have, if you haven't walked down there, it does change the whole environment. But that's to accommodate the expansion. So we removed something right around the area of 40 trees. The reason for that is to remove them so that we aren't conflicting with bird nesting and that sort of thing when we start the project. So yeah, so if you have any questions with regard to that, I'm happy to answer them.
What is the expected time frame for that phase one?
So the phase one, and thank you for asking that. It's we can't work in the waterway. There's a moratorium from October to April. So we have until about the end of April, all the way to mid-October, to accomplish all that work. So that's our plan. Now, again, this is all tentative on the permitting. What we didn't want to happen is all of a sudden we receive the regulatory permits, and now we can start, but we haven't planned. We don't have the design ready. So we're working with our architect right now to get the design completed for that portion, get the plans and specs so we can go out to bid. So that's our goal, and that's what we're pushing for right now. There's going to be some biological assessment. We'll have biologists on site. There perhaps could be some relocation of some wildlife and some other things as we dewater that pond, and also some impact of the environment. So we want them there to sort of direct us and give us some feedback in terms of how we can safely do that and protect the environment at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All
Rich.
right, thank you.
Yeah, so just to add on to what Rich was saying, if you get a chance to get out there in the next few weeks or even the next few months, we've now installed a construction fence along the portion where we just removed the trees, which is actually the southern end of the nature lake. That fence is there to protect the wildlife, also keep people out of the area, to be quite honest with you. So it will be there until the pond expansion is complete. And possibly a little after that, as you can imagine, we're going to be revegetating that shoreline. It's part of our permit, and we're going to want those plants to get established probably before we remove that fence. So it's not very sightly, but it's hopefully beneficial. And just to add on to what Rich said, if you can envision this, we are going to be dewatering that concrete pond at some point, and it'll probably be dewatered for as much as 6 months. And so that environment is really going to, if we do move forward and get into construction April, May, it's going to be a different summer out at Heather Farm for sure. So, but it's progress, and that's the direction the community want to go. So that's what we're working on. So in regards to my my brief update here, and Bob hit on some of this, and I've seen some interest here from the commissioners. We have a number of projects that I wanted to bring to the commission this year. We did for some of you who weren't involved, we did a 10-year park plan, which was, I think, it was either a 2015 to 2025 plan or 16 to 26 that we need to start working on updating. When we put this plan together, it took us 3 or 4 sessions. We actually held the sessions out at the Corp Yard and over at Heather Farm, where we could actually get out some plans and have more of a conversation study session. The second one, second item for me is we've got some trails that are 20 to 25, maybe 30-year social trails that we are evaluating. We have a change in use document that we're using, and once we complete that, we'll be bringing it back to the commission to share that information and share our recommendation moving forward. And then 2 others. There's we've received a lot of feedback over the years about the nature lake and the state of the nature lake with all the tules that are in the nature lake, and that kind of is in line with Bob's, Mr. Simmons' comments regarding, and now the council's comments regarding our waterways and creeks. And I'd love to bring that information back, share with you what we know historically, kind of summarize that 93 creek restoration plan, and just be able to have a broader conversation and make sure that everybody's in the know of what those plans look like in the past. And then Yeah, and so I think that's it. So I'm not sure which is a priority for this commission, so I'm going to send out an email and ask each of you to prioritize these 3 or 4 opportunities, and once I get that feedback returned, I'll start working on preparing for the April and what would it be, April and June meeting. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Be like a brief description of each of the item, like
Yes.
for us to vote? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. When I send them out, I'll summarize what, in a little bit more detail than I'm sharing tonight. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? Nope. Okay, thank you all for being here. This concludes the February 3rd, 2025 Pros Commission meeting. We are adjourned until April 7th, 2025. Thank you.